What's up everybody, I hope you're well. Today we're going to be having a look at some chords and how to voice them for the orchestra. We're going to start by having a quick look at some piano reductions. We will then have a quick chat on these chords, and finally we'll be talking about how to spread them out across the orchestra, what note you should give to what instrument, that kind of stuff. Everything I'm showing in the video in terms of scores and MIDI is already available on my Patreon, so check that out if you're interested. Okay, so I'm gonna jump on the piano and play some stuff for a minute or so. Okay, so the first chord was a B flat major. This voicing, this is the way I tend to play this, but once it's going to go to the full orchestra, you can make it a little bit denser as I've shown you in the previous part of the video, right? So I did something like this. And that's just because we have, you know, a lot of players available and I don't quite have as many fingers to play all these notes at once. But yeah, it's a very beautiful kind of sound, very open kind of sound. And what makes it sound bright and open like this is just, you know, the fact that we have a lot of fifths and fourths built right inside the chord, right? We have a fourth over here, and we have a fourth, and we have a fifth. But also this is a fifth as well. The second chord was quite similar to the first one. It's again, you know, a B flat major, but it's now in first inversion, sorry. And what this chord really is though, is just, you know, an F major in first inversion over a B flat major spread triad in first inversion as well. And once this is going to be orchestrated, you know, again, is going to be a little bit denser. So what you saw me playing before was this. So we have this clash built right inside the chord with a semitone and tone, but as we add the rest of the chord, it's gonna sound nice and beautiful. And the third chord was an E flat sharp 11, so we have a Lydian kind of chord. It's a very beautiful yet dissonant kind of sound. We have a lot of semitones again built right inside of it, which are kind of hidden, right, because of the way the chord is spread out across the octaves. So we have the sharp 11th over here that clashes with B flat. Then we have the major 7th right here that clashes with the tonic. And what you saw me playing before was, you know, extending the chord a little bit like this. And an easier way to see this chord might be as a few different triads stacked on top of each other. We end up with an F over G flat sus2 over E flat. The next chord was a C minor 7 over B flat. And the way I tend to see this is, you know, as chord 1, right? In the key of B flat, this is really just a suspended kind of chord. B flat, sus4, sus2 with an added sixth. And it very naturally tends to resolve back to B flat major, even more so when we have B flat on the bottom. We then had a B flat minor in first inversion with the added ninth. I think this is quite straightforward. You know, we have the third in the bottom, the root, fifth, you know, the root again, then the ninth, minor third, and then the fifth, and in the orchestrated version I decided to, you know, double the fifth an octave higher, just, you know, to make it sound a little bit more open, a little bit bigger. The next chord is possibly one of my personal favorites. So we have this G minor 11, and this can yet again be put into a simpler kind of structure. So if we closely inspect this chord, you very soon notice that we basically have an F major triad on top of G minor spread triad. Now, what you saw me playing after this was basically chord 5 in the key of B flat, which is F major. And as you know, you can give to chord 5 a much stronger sense of tension by adding extensions, and you can play with it quite a bit more than a few of the other chords that would be part of the key. And what I decided to do for this one was basically adding the flat 9th and then the 13th as well. So we basically end up with this chord, which is an F13 flat 9, but you might have guessed it, just like the other chords, you know, if we closely inspect this chord, you very quickly see that we basically have a D major triad stacked right on top of an F7. And finally, the last chord was a really wide B flat major built with a bunch of, you know, open fifths. So we have the root, the fifth, the 9th, the 13th, the major 3rd, and the major 7th, basically making this chord B flat major 13. So yeah, open fifths, they can create a very beautiful wide kind of sound, and you can have a little bit more control over all these chords as you orchestrate them, because you can basically decide how you want to distribute the tension of the chord depending on how many players you decide to give a specific note to, how many times you double it, whether you decide to double it in octave, or what section you give it to. Okay, so how do you orchestrate these chords? The way I like to do this is personally just pick a section first that is going to provide the foundation for everything. In this case, and many others, you know, probably like 90% of my music, because I'm that predictable, is going to be strings. But that immediately creates a problem. That is, you know, we only have 5 families, right? With the double basses, the cellos, the violas, and the 2 violins. And we had some really big wide chords, so we basically need to split them up. Yeah, we need to divide them into 2 or 3 parts divisi in order to be able to accomplish playing, you know, these big wide chords. The problem is that the more times you divide them, the less power you're going to get from each section, and this is not necessarily a volume issue as much as a resonance issue. So the way I like to, you know, divide strings for playing wide chords like this is to split up the cello section and the second violins into a 2-part divisi. I'm picking cellos and violin too because they're resonant instruments and they're going to provide a balanced sound even when they're going to be split. So if we have a look at the first chord, you can see how I'm basically picking the double bass and cellos to form a spread triad that goes underneath everything else. What violin 2 and violas are doing is kind of interesting. We have the violas going right in the middle of this fifth that we have on violin 2, and this might seem counterintuitive, but again, it has something to do with balance. The lower the violas get in register, the more nasal they tend to sound. So once the strings are sorted, what you'll decide to do with the rest of the instruments is just a matter of either making the chords a little bit denser or bringing out, you know, a specific chord tone. Like for example, what we have on the bassoons. Most of the times you see that I have them playing in octaves, going right in between our cellos. You know, the reason why I'm using the bassoons for this as opposed to any other instrument is just again to make the chord a little bit thicker, but without making it too muddy, like it would, for example, if I were to pick brass. And something similar happens with the flute and oboe, with this, you know, F and A, while on the violin the top note is just an F. You know, the reason is I just wanted to just, you know, thicken up the chord a little bit, but I didn't necessarily want, you know, that top A note that we have on the flute and the oboe sing out too much, like it would otherwise if we were to be giving it to violin 1, for example. And for the clarinets being, in the middle register, we have more options. We can either use them to thicken up some of the chords, or just, bringing out some of the chord tones that we might want to bring attention to, or even use the lower register to basically form some open chords together with the bassoons and just bring out some of the warmth of these chords. And I always bring in the brass last because it's the easy part. Once the bulk of the chords, and the orchestration is done, tuba is going to be doubling the double basses, the trombones are going to be doubling the cellos most of the time, and we can use the third trombone to kind of thicken up the chords a little bit just by adding an extra note on top if you want to. And what we are going to be doing for the French horns is similar to what you would do with the clarinets. So we can either just, give a little bit of support to the violas, but also use the horns to bring out some of the chord tones that you want more focus on. So that's it. That's basically my formula to orchestrate all these chords, and I tend to do it exactly the same way, like pretty much 90% of the time. Yes, because I'm that lazy. So let's see if we can write some music by using some of the concepts we have been talking about today. So before we say goodbye, I just wanted to very quickly say that both compositionally and orchestrationally, it was just a matter of kind of filling the blanks, right? Like, for example, the very first chord very naturally tends to lead into this B flat major. Similarly, that Lydian chord that we played before very naturally kind of resolves back into this E flat major, and basically the piece is made of these little kind of moments. I'm just really doing what the music leads me to. One small exception though might be that, B flat suspended we talked about, the C minor 7 over B flat. We said that it naturally resolved back to B flat major, but what I did is something different, this E flat in first inversion. But even here, if we take a closer look, you can see how, this B flat major chord, that is the one we're supposed to resolve to, is built within, E flat major 9. So yeah, it was something, interesting to try to make the music a little bit less predictable. And in terms of how the music is orchestrated, I'm just really kind of trying to follow the formula, with a small exception on the second half of the piece. I'm just doing some octaves on the woodwinds, really just to bring out the melody a little bit, bring out the top note of the chords. But as you can see, I'm just very quickly going back to our main structure. And the rest is very much as we talked about, with the strings being the foundation of the piece for the rest of the orchestra to build upon. So we have all the most important elements in the strings, and whatever else we decide to do with the rest of the orchestra is going to be either, adding density or bringing focus to some of the notes that I thought would be more important. So yeah, that's pretty much it for today. If you enjoyed the video, hit the like button, subscribe if you're new, check out my Patreon if you want to support the channel or for extra educational resources such as the MIDI session files, scores for everything I've shown you today, alongside many other things. That's it for today. Thank you very much for watching, and see you on the next one. Bye.